Hello, everyone. Welcome to another interview hosted by the Midwestern Marx Institute for Marxist Theory and Political Analysis. Today's interview is all about the current class struggle in France, which is growing more and more acute as we speak. The American mainstream media cartel is, of course, pretty silent on these developments, leaving a lot of us in the dark as to what is happening there. So we've asked Boris Differ of the PRCF to join us and fill us in. So, that being said, let's get right to it, huh? Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Before we get started, I just want to make a small remark. It is Lenin's birthday today, April 22nd. So in honor of Lenin, I want to read a poem about him that is one of my favorites. It's by the poet of the American people, Langston Hughes. It goes, Lenin walks around the world. Frontiers cannot bar him. Neither barracks nor barricades impede, nor does barbed wire scar him. Lenin walks around the world, black, brown, and white receive him. Language is no barrier, the strangest tongues believe him. Lenin walks around the world, the sun sets like a scar. Between the darkness and the dawn, there rises a red star. So yeah, Lenin's birthday. And then we're going to shift from that to France. So first, let's get to know our guest. Boris here is, and by the way, I'm going to apologize right now, Boris. I am going to butcher every French word, and it's going to be said in my horrible Midwest accent, so I apologize for that. Anyway, Boris is the Secretary of International Relations for the PRCF and the member of the General Confederation of Labor, or CGT, a militant trade union in France. Before I mention where he teaches, I'm going to apologize one more time, though, because I'm going to butcher every French word. Anyway, he teaches history at Bordeaux-Montaigne University while studying for a PhD in contemporary history and the history of trade unionism. Welcome, Boris. It's really a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and don't mind, you spell it well.
Okay.
I see really worse than that. I don't speak very well English, so it will be in English, the typical French-speaking band English, you know. So.
I can understand you perfectly, so that's good. With my last name, I'm used to mispronunciations, so it's fine. Well, with that, let's just get right into it. Could you tell us a little bit about the PRCF? What is it? How did it form? And how did you yourself begin working for it?
Okay. Yes, I don't want to make a world conference on history, because the communist movement in France, it's a whole universe, and someone can get lost in it. But I can make a resume saying that the old French Communist Party, PCF, it still exists nowadays, but from the 80s to the 90s, it abandons all its political principle based on communism, Marxist-Leninism, it was a long process of evolving toward the Social Democrat Party, like a left-wing, moderate Social Democrat Party. But so from this time, there was some splits of various factions that try to rebuild the party, the Communist Party. So they try to do it inside and to fight inside the Communist Party. But at the start of the 2000s, they lost the Congress, the National Congress in 2000. They lost the possibility to gain the majority. And at this time, most of them found that the party wasn't possible to really change it from inside. So from there, various groups went off. It was more or less small groups, like 100 people or some hundreds of people. No, it's really small for parties that had hundreds of thousands of militants. No, so PRCF is one of this group, because there is other group and so on. So at the start, one of the smaller group, led by the philosopher, Marxist philosopher Georges Gaston, which is pretty much known now because of the edition of some of his books, and that are well different in French society, because we have editorial and so on. And from there, this group evolved and what we call now PRCF, which it's not much a sexy name, but it's Pole of Communist Renaissance in France. No, but the objective really of this organization, you can say we are pretty much already a political communist party, but the intent was to rebuild the old communist party on the principle of the communist party, of the CPF. But building with some strength. No, we didn't think it was possible to say, okay, with a few people you will do a party and it's all. No, you have to reach some objectives, like to be recognized by the communists in the country, to have a direct link and support of the working class, or a part of the working class at least. And of course, international recognition to proclaim Communist Party. No, that's one of the conditions. So this is still a work in progress, I would say, because there was really a generational gap with the old generation of communist militants now in France. And the generation which is like between 30 and 50 years now, this generation is practically lost to political militancy, because they didn't take part practically in political militancy, neither in communism, neither in other part of. So now we have a generational gap, because there is many young people, like 20s and so on, or less, inclusively less, that massively begging to enter to political organization and to communist organization in France. So now we can say from some years now, we have a really dynamic of building up the organization, and we see for the first time the possibility to soon build a new party in France. And the PRCF is now we can say, the strongest group in France who work this. But we work with other groups, like the National Association of Communists, and which are really representing trade unions and some other groups. So it's really not still not done, but we think we are getting in the good way, I can say. So it's a really general presentation.
No, that's great. That was wonderful. There's so much there, right? I really think this is an exciting time, because it's not just France, but all over the West. Communist parties are building up or rebuilding right now. And you said something that really caught me there. that the last generation that are sort of between 30 and 50 now were gone. There was no real militancy going on. That's my generation, right? I'm on the older end of that, but
There's still exceptions to the rule.
we in Gen X that we always made fun of the individualism and everyone's got their own color flannel was the joke. But it strikes me as maybe a result of the fall of the Soviet Union. So many people just gave up when that happened, and there was no longer a place for young revolutionaries or people getting interested in revolutionary politics to go. And then the people that had been militant gave up as well, right? A lot of them went into liberalism or reaction, and it was a really, really dark time. But we seem to be coming out of that now, and it seems like what happened in France is a prelude to what is happening in the U.S. Right now, we're very focused on rebuilding our party, our Communist Party, right? And that's something that ended up not happening there, but the PRCF came out of it. And it's really cool to sort of learn about the history of how that happened. I want to switch gears a little bit from history, though, into the modern day, because that's kind of why we're here. Americans don't really know a lot about the French struggle. Mostly, it's just very vague stuff about the gas taxes and the Yellow Vest movement. So let's start there. Could you give us a sort of overview of how all of this sort of really began escalating with the Yellow Vests?
Yes, indeed. We think that the Yellow Vest was the starting point of what we are seeing now, because the last strongest movement of strikes, protests, and that reached, inclusively they reached some victories like reduce labor week to 35 hours a week.
That's fantastic.
But it was from 1995. It was the last big movement. And many in this time say, okay, that's the last stand of the working class, and goodbye, and close the door and bye. No, that's it was like practically 2 decades of sort of gap of social. There were some movements, but more spontaneous and more. They didn't last many time, no? And there was some movement in the middle of the 2000, 2005, also one in 2009, another one in 2016, but it wasn't really the big deal. But we saw that there was like we were reaching an ending point because all the trade union entering some reformist play. It seems that they didn't want anymore to do a real movement like calling to strikes, continuous strikes, continuous protest. They only call to 1 day of protest, and then the next week, like it's a game, or I don't know. And it wasn't really serious. And I think that's a big part of the base of trade unions and working class and popular class, and they get really bored with this. But the inertia of the movement is remain like this from years. But with the Yellow Vest, there was a breaking. How do we say? Yes, it was breaking. The break of this dynamic, and with the Yellow Vest, there was the return of the practice of social uprising. Although it was only on a concrete, a specific demand, like the question of the gasoline prices, and the question of some question linked to social justice, but really general, so with the Yellow Vest, there was really a breaking point because it was really a massive, spontaneous movement. but that remain in the time during months. And inclusively, some group of yellow vests they are still protesting, and inclusively today there are some group really strong organized group of yellow vests. They maintain themselves all this year protesting and doing action. So we see in this moment that there was a change in the social movements towards something that now we are seeing a bit clear, which what is happening now in France. That is a return of a massive social struggle, and despite the best effort of some bureaucratic trade unionist leadership to break down the thing, no?
We get the same thing here.
And so I don't know if you want I follow with the actual movement or.
Well, we got a question here. Willingly Nomadic asks if what you're saying is it built up from smaller unorganized protests into what you were just discussing with the massive social uprising.
Yes, it was pretty much spontaneous because principally there were many trade unionists, but trade unionists that were getting bored by all the theater of the leadership of the trade unions. Say, okay, now we will do something, but we will not do it like one day a week. We will do this continuously, and so they take the initiative to launch the protest, and from there they begin to build up some direct social links, no, between them, and to make organization from themselves and outside the old system of trade unions and political parties. So practically it becomes a self-organized movement. One of the most symbolics maybe of this movement was the occupation of how do you say, like in the circulation you have some round points when the cars they do a circle, so it's for circulation, no, regulation of circulation.
I don't remember structure, is that what you're talking about?
It's like when you have traffic, no, traffic regulation with the street, so from corner, from crossing, but it's wrong, a circle, so the cars have to do a circle. France is like the country where there is most of this type of traffic urbanism, but so this is a big place, and so the yellow vests they begin to occupy this place and begin to build camps and to blockade all the traffics and so on. So it became a bit the symbolic of the movement, and there was still occupation of some of these points practically until the pandemics and so on, no? When the governments they take them off with the preoccupation of the pandemic.
I was actually going to ask you a bit about the pandemic as well, because here we had quite a lot of growing spontaneous uprisings as well. Ours were mostly around police brutality and the growing police state. And it seemed that the pandemic cooled things off, but couldn't stop them. Was it similar in France?
Yes, inclusively, I think like when they start to make some regulation of circulation and to say, okay, you can't go further from 1 kilometer from your house. And here in France, it was a really strong containment measures. But when they begin to do this, there was still protest against Macron. And in some way, it seems that like they did this so strong because more than the pandemic itself, they wanted to stop down the protest, so we get a good pretext, no? And the fact is that when they left everything over, the protest began another time.
Okay. Wow. It's so wild to look at the parallels and how this works. It really, what it reminds me of is one of the primary functions of the vanguard party that Lenin talks about. We have all these spontaneous uprisings, and the vanguard needs to play a sort of linking role that can link them all together and push them in the revolutionary direction they need to go. And really, whenever I think about that kind of thing, it drives me crazy at the last generation for not having that infrastructure put in place for us to be able to do that already. We're still all building up and reestablishing connections with the masses in our country.
Yes, that's one of the main problem of the mass movement now, that there is a necessity of revolutionary party. You know that you can proclaim yourself vanguard. You have to become this when the people actually follow or see something useful in what you are saying and what you are doing for them. So we know this because we have some groups there that, I don't know, they are really small group and they call themselves vanguard party or who knows. But the reality is that the mass movement is not really led by a party, but also we try to do the best to support the movement and everything that can make it stronger. But of course, you need a really strong organization to have this possibility of leaning one way or another, is to influence also the trade unions leadership, because maybe we can talk a bit about more about this later. But in the actual movement, there was also a national congress of the major trade unions, which is CGT. And there, for the first time in 20 years, there was really a strong struggle between the reformist wing and the revolutionary wing. And this was a possibility to have a real leadership in this trade union, which is really massive. So there you can play this role of vanguard, no?
That is fantastic to hear. I really wish our big unions like that had revolutionary leadership. We have sort of individual communists and individual leadership positions in our version of that, which is the AFL or the AFL-CIO. But nothing like that, nothing like a real revolutionary section yet. So that's really, really incredible to hear. I'd really like to focus on what you were just talking about, though, if we could, like, go in a little deeper on this struggle between the reformers and revolutionaries, if you'd like. We could sort of go over the history instead if you want, but I'm really interested in this.
Oh yeah, that's it's not something new, of course, because it's an old struggle, continuous struggle, no, between those two elements. And the CGT is one of the oldest trade unions. It was founded in 1895, no, in the 29th century. And it was in the origin an anarchist trade union. But then there was a big fight between reformers and revolutionary, anarchist and communist, and sometimes the reformer wins, sometimes the revolutionary, and of course it influenced very much the way of managing or struggling now in the country. So I won't do a whole history of this because it can be pretty long. But the reality was in the last part of the 20th century, the CGT was directly linked to the Communist Party, and all the leadership practically was in the trade union communist militants. So there was a double connection, no?
Mm.
But as the party took his reformist stand and social democrat evolution, so it happens in the trade union, no, in CGT, and in the Congress of 1999. They elected the reformer at the head of the trade union, and so on. From now, it was their leadership in the trade union, and this is why also there was not a so strong movement of opposition, because clearly revolutionary leadership, it won't do what they are doing now. But the interesting fact is that now the CGT is like a monster. It's a labyrinth, because you have a real big organization. You have local trade unions in each factory or each enterprise. You have a federation of each profession, no? National trade unions. Then you have territorial form of organization, local unions, the provincial county level of organization, and then the confederation above everything, no? And so they, through the reformers, they gained the confederation. There was still mainly trade unions, local trade unions, so inclusively federation, the World Federation, were still with revolutionary position, no? So the fights went on all the time. But the reality is that for the first time now, this year, for the first time in 20 years, there was a revolutionary opposition in the National Congress. And,
That's amazing.
the bad news is that they didn't win, but it was really a small difference. And the reformists, they took some of the revolutionary leadership and they put it in the new direction. So to settle down the thing, no?
Mhm.
But the reality is that it can explode. It can explode in every moment, because the majority of the base of trade unionists of CGT, they don't want any more reformers in the leadership now. So we think that maybe there will be a breakdown between the two sides. So it's not the first time it's happened in France and to CGT. So we are working in this, because of course in the actual movement nobody wanted to break down the trade union, not the World Trade Union. But the reality is that in some times it will not be possible to concile the two sides.
Mm. I mean, that's what happens in any revolutionary situation, right? You get the reformers who want to hold it back and the revolutionaries who want to go forward. And there comes a point when there's no way to continue on as one thing. That's, what happened with the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks and every other party and group in history. I really, really like hearing, I don't want to like harp on about the movement thing, but I really like hearing about the trade union movement in Europe, because we don't have a large one here in the US, right? We had the Red Purges and the union busting, all of Reaganism and into neoliberalism, to the point where only 4% of our entire population is organized labor right now. And there's a very big and broad movement to correct this and start building new unions, but it's arising in what we call the reproletariat, because we don't have a large industrial sector here anymore. Globalization took everything away industrially, productive labor wise, from the US to places where the exploitation could be done at a higher rate. And we've sort of entered this period of full financialization, right? So that means the unions being built are in the delivery and service sectors, right? So we have the Amazon warehouses getting unionized. We had a huge union win there, and things like Starbucks are unionizing, which is awesome to see. That's really good training for people. But it's not like the rail workers, right? It's not massively economically important.
Yes, yes. Maybe I can make some specification because in some way we had the same process as you because there was a big disindustrialization from the 17th and so on, and it was not the casual, random, not like the invisible end of the market. Or, okay, I will take no. The capitalist class they broke directly the strongest point of organization of the working class, with where metalworks, mining sector. This was they were the strongest sector of working class in France with a big industry, but they destroyed everything. In some way, this is why the working class movement get weaker, and that the more revolutionary sector of the working class they were really like weakened and depressed and everything. So the reformer took now the lead because from other sectors which are historically linked to some opportunist ways, no. And this is still a problem because now the things are beginning to change in a good way, but they're still really weak. We have like, if you take the trade unions percentage, no, of the of membership, no, of the working population, it's small. The private sector, it's only 5%, and it's the main sector where is working class. But if you take the public services, it's like 15%. So there is a really asymmetric situation between the two. But because the public sector was the majority, you had majority of reformers. But now we hope that with what is happening now, there will be more and more membership in a new way of the private sector and the industrial sector, where there is still a big proportion of working class, because it can change everything in the lead of the trade unions. No?
Oh, that's, I did not know that. I had a different picture in my head. I'd like to sort of switch gears now, though, if that's all right with you, and sort of go back to the yellow vest, but bring it forward past that. And so, from the yellow vest to today, and the escalations happening, and the mass demonstrations happening now, can you connect those two for us and sort of explain how the yellow vest was the embryonic form of the explosive action happening right now?
Yeah, indeed, because in some way, what was really fundamental with the yellow vest was the urgent need to take a new form of action and to radicalize the action. No? Like, the state is violating the freedom of protesting. This is not something new, no? Like from the 19, they made a law to force everyone to declare and ask permission to the state to make a protest. So it's practically a way of illegalizing freedom of protest, no? And so the yellow vest say, okay, we doesn't bother of this. We will do protest every part and everything. And so they break all the system of containment and repression, and this is why the state Macron regime he launched a terrible massive repression against this movement, because they saw that there was how do you say that the concrete demands they did, it was not the real deal of the movement, that they went much further, and that the real deal was they wanted to overthrow him. No, like we take Paris, we go to the government. The strongest protest was in the Elysee Avenue, and where if you go down, you get to the presidential palace, and so they came like hundreds of thousands there. and it was really close to enter to the presidential palace and get Macron out. No, so this is why when they realized it was something new, because that you can say it's not only a protest or some social movement random, no, on specific demands and like they want. See, if it's a movement that begin to question or everything, but it didn't fully moderate in this time. So it was like a social uprising. He gets repressed, and then he went a bit weaker and reached some symbolic action from years now. So this is why we think it was the starting point, because what we see now is the continuity of this, because now the people, majority of people, they so the social movement now, it's supposed to be about the reform of retirement system, as you can already know. But majority of people, they ask simply that Macron goes out, no, that destitution, inclusively overthrowing the regime. So you can see in the street many people protesting, inclusively slogans like destitution of some of the old revolutionary ideas of the French Revolution. No, it's still are beginning to spread now. Like the idea, the people is sovereign, so the people is a power, and so the people decide uh, how the society is going. No, so Macron is acting like a despot, an autocrat, monarch, king. No, absolutist power. No, so he say, I am the king. No, I have the power and the legitimacy, and you, the people, you are nothing. But it's not what is right in the constitution. So the people say we are the power, and so now we see that the social uprising is going toward practically some form of insurrectional or rebellion. No, I can't say it's already a revolutionary situation because it still lacks some elements, but we're really close to this. We're really close to this, and it seems that it will not get down. So it will continue because they began to protest and strike from January. We now practically, and we will be in May in some days. No, it's not stopping. So the yellow vest, in comparison, the yellow vest already break down toward 3 months and they get weaker. But now the movement is still going on. We can go in concrete facts or example of this if you want.
Yeah, I was going to ask, could you sort of give an idea of the amount of people involved here for the audience and how many demonstrations are going on, that kind of thing? What are the specific things? I know it's a lot of it's about get Macron out, but you know the retirement age and things like that. Would you say that is more of an excuse to be out there and there's more of a general sentiment against the establishment? A lot of times in the US, it's sort of what it is. There's one single thing, but it's about everything, even if people can't sort of say that consciously.
Yes. The people reject totally the project of reform. So this is one of the main points. But the truth is that people, it can be simple. That people hate Macron. Macron's and his regime have their way of governing is so awful, disrespecting. So they're insulting every day. They're insulting the simple people. Say you are nothing. You're shit. You're trash. Or so. They say this in the TV. Or so they don't mind anything. So in some way, this way of doing the thing, it's only gets that the people hate them. I think that everything now they will do will only get more people in the streets because they hate them and they want them out. So this is a reality. This is a reality. And now it's a bit hilarious because they can't even go in the country because everywhere they go, there is thousands of people insulting them. The trade unionists, they cut off the lights. They can't do anything. And inclusively, despite of the repression, in the last, it was in Thursday, Macron goes to eastern part of France, no, in Alsace, and of course he tried to in the TV to get only some supporting people from his party, like saying, "Oh, see, the people is liking me," but the reality is that you could listen that there was thousands of people outside the police wall insulting him, and the hilarious fact is that inclusively people they try to manage to get through the police saying, "Oh yeah, I'm a fan of Macron," and they reach the TV when Macron say. They insulting him. They say you're more corrupt. You will be overthrown. They did something like this. So he can't manage the country. So what we see now is that the country is not. They can't. How do you say govern? Or they can't lead the country. They can't lead. There is no government still possible. And this is one of the conditions of revolution situation, as Lenin say, you know. One of the conditions
can't go on in the old way, right? That's huge. This is so incredibly exciting to me. It sounds as if the French people are beginning to recognize their own power.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yes, I didn't answer your question about the numbers. No, sorry, I think about this. Sorry to interrupt you, but there is a constant struggle between media, official mainstream media that are totally linked to the regime, no, because Macron bought them. Everyone knows this, no? Like he gave them hundreds of millions of euros to. Inclusively, he received all the media leadership, editorialists, and editors, and in the presidential palace, and tells them what they have to say. So it's not a secret now anymore. And so the media, they constantly say, "Oh no, there is nobody in the street, or there is many people, or they're getting tired. Now it's the end of the movement." All the time they're saying, or they are speaking about other topics, like if it doesn't exist, the real situation, social situation of the country. So there is a constant struggle about the numbers, no, like how many people, like. So it's not always easy to tell exactly, but some of the major day of protests, we think we reached more than 2 million people in the streets, and hundreds of cities, of the main cities, all the main cities and medium intermediate cities, there was protest. And
let me interrupt you real quick. Let me interrupt you real quick, just for everybody listening. This is millions of people in the streets in France, and our media has said nothing about it, right? So I really want to hammer home the importance of getting the word out about things like this ourselves, because we can't rely on our class enemy to show us what is happening in the world. We just can't. Go on, Boris. I'm sorry about that.
No. It's okay. It's okay. And we thank you to give us the opportunity to tell this, because it's important for us to internationally share what is happening in the country, because the media, Macron regime, try to say everything is fine. There is no problem, no? But the reality is that I can give you some anecdotes, but it's really hilarious, no? Like he has to receive the King Charles III of England, the new King of England, but he has to cancel the visit because even the working people of the service of ceremony, you know, that like the people I think if there is one service that won't go to strike in the entire history is them, because they are the most loyal. But inclusively them, they say, we will not get the red carpet to this king, and we don't support Macron because we hate him. So you have to cancel the visit because he wanted to make a lunch in Versailles, no, like the king, like in the king times. Wow. But it has to cancel.
Wow. So let me ask you a question about Macron. How do the people feel about his sort of pivot away from the American financial system and the dollar and
Mhm.
our sort of debt peonage we forced on. Well, I say our like I'm a financier, right? American debt and dollar hegemony. How do the people feel about Macron seeming as if he's going to step away from that and pivoting
Mhm.
towards a friendlier relationship with China?
Mhm. Yes, we have to say we were really surprised of this visit to China because it seemed it was another people that replaced Macron because it was like we didn't think he could do something like this, like actually being an independent chief of state. No, that was the first time. So we were really surprised, and so inclusively his own camp side criticize him because he acts like a pragmatic, no, chief of state with China. So we know that France is beginning to pay in yuan some of the uh, commerce exchange, no. So with China directly, with India also. So it seems there is a change there. But it's like a bit schizophrenic because you have like the official state politics that sometimes they act like a bit independent. But if you take the media or the leading class, they are completely pro United States and dollar hegemony, no, and inclusively, I think worst in the media. But Macron is famous to be really following, no, the hegemony order, and most people think he is not a real independent chief of state, if not a puppet of international finance, no, and so on. But this was really surprising, no, this visit in China. So uh, because we know Macron, we don't think it will be a new era of international politics. So maybe it was some intent to play something and to distract, doing something more or less correct. I don't know, because it was a try, maybe it have to see with history. So I don't want to be boring, but because France was one of the sole country to go out of NATO, no, it's the military command of NATO with the
Mhm.
period of the Gaulle. And I think that De Gaulle is like the sole historical figure that most of the French say it was really a great leadership of political leadership because it was independent. And one of the things did De Gaulle was recognize the People's Republic of China, not the first country in West recognizing People's Republic of China. So we think that Macron did something like to see, oh, see me, I'm like De Gaulle, I'm an independent leader. So, but it was only more like an exception in his communicational agenda that really a change. But of course, we think that it's positive, and that effectively, maybe the sole thing he says that was true, that we don't have to follow dollar hegemony, and that there is a new world order that are building the bricks, and we have to enter this and to be an independent state, doing all stuff. No?
Yeah. Wow. It's so inspiring to hear this. A lot of hearing the differences between France and the US is interesting. If say Biden would have gone against our banks and began working closer with Xi, a little like Trump seemed like he almost was going to do at one point.
Mhm.
Um, you would get some people just just pretending that this was the worst thing he could ever do because they're against him. And then others pretending it's the best thing that he could ever do and
Mhm.
forgetting all of the xenophobic nonsense that they'd had in the past because they were with him. It's a
Mhm.
really weird game we play here. Um, I have one. We're reaching around the 50-minute mark now, and
Mhm.
I don't want to take a lot of your time up, but I do have one more really important question I really would like to hear about is, what is the role on the ground of a militant communist like yourself in all of these uprisings? Sort of give us a play-by-play of what you do.
Oh, yeah, I can say what I do personally, or in general, some of militants, comrades,
or both.
Yeah. Actually, we have comrades that are workers like in transport system, bus, and railroads. We have many comrades in railroads because it's a strong federation of trade unionists. So all these comrades that are involving in the trade union, their main fight is to be in the trade union, to organize a strike, to try to get stronger in the protest, no? Like calling for a continuous strike and trying to reach the fact that the majority of workers of the section of go to strike, no? Because in France you have an individual right to strike, so I think that only one guy can go to strike in 500, but it doesn't have the same impact if it's one or the 500, no? So the real deal, the most hard work is to actually convincing the majority of workers to follow the strike, no? And of course you need organization because they can't go to strike for a long time, no? Because it's wage. You lost your wage. So you need organization like this is why the trade union is the real fundamental role of the trade union now is to organize a fund of the strike so the strike can maintain longer. And if the strike can maintain longer, like for months, like some of the best sectors did, and they are still on strike now, you have a chance to really make a relation of force with the ruling class, no, and forcing them to abandon their position. So this is one of the main tasks. Not everybody does this because not everybody is trade unionist or working class. There is also teachers, students. These people, they go mainly on protest, not in the street, or going to the strike points to support the workers there. No, I think because
let me interrupt you real quick. I'm really sorry. I'm very rude. A lot of people, when I've sort of they ask me, "Oh, how can I help?" This and this action going on. I go to the picket line. They will appreciate you being there. And they're like, I feel weird and I don't know any of them. Just go. I guarantee you, any workers on strike, if you come there and support just to stand there with them, they will love it. They will love it. Everybody will talk to you. It'll be a great time. Just go and help. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're right. It's I think in this moment we can build a class solidarity, class social links, because we live in a society where we're really individualized. So these moments are the best moment to build relation with our class, working class members, no, brothers and sisters of the working class. So this is really a good moment, despite sometimes the repression, because there was strong repression. Maybe the most famous strikes was one of the how do you call this? The ones that recollect the trash, no? The trash. I'm not sure
garbage.
The correct.
Yeah. Garbage workers is what we call them.
Okay, garbage worker. Okay, yeah. Yes, thank you. So in Paris, they didn't. They went on strike for months, and so Paris was full of garbage, no? And they say, okay, the bourgeois, you can go to take your garbage to the trash, no? For one time in your life, you will work. and I think that the government, the state, they mobilized the police, inclusively sector of the army, to try to clean up a bit the things and to force some of the workers to go to work. So you can see some garbage worker with police they are saying, okay, take the garbage. What the fuck, no? And, and this is one of the main symbolics. The other one, the strongest one, is refineries, energy workers. This is the great deal now, the strike, because they are making a strong impact on economy, and they already lost billions, hundreds of millions of euros in. For example, you have now still a strike in one of the refinery in the south. So the super tankers of gasoline, they can't go. So there is a whole traffic jam of super tankers there in the south part of France.
That's
So this is
fantastic.
an example.
Wow. I what do you I so at the Midwestern Marx Institute, we have we're trying to sort of call for the synthesizing of what we call an American Marxism, right? Something that updates for the modern sort of what we believe is the higher stage of imperialism. And this includes something we call reproletarianization, which is this new formation of people standing directly in contradiction, not to the industrial capital that the traditional proletariat does, but to finance capital itself, as finance sort of grew to this stage of directly affecting regular working people. And we see a sort of future of being able to organize people regardless of what trade they're in or what their job is, based on being able to attack banks through debt organizing, right? Debt strikes, payment strikes, rent strikes, all of these things affect the holding companies at the very, very top. And I think the future is going to look like connecting this to the organized union struggle. That's just me, but everything I hear from you or have heard from you today has been incredibly inspiring, brother. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
No. We are pleased to see that it can inspire all the people, and inclusively in Europe, in Spain, and I go there to tell them. So because the main deal is that working class is international, no. So if the struggle can become international, there will be dead. There will be dead the capitalism, no. So meanwhile, we stay in one country. Okay, we can win some things, but internationalism is fundamental. No? For one way to do this is to share some of this, and of course, if you have any other question, I have some free time more, or we can go on. I didn't talk many about myself, but because I'm in some strange situation, because I passed. I'm studying in, as you know, in university, but I don't have a job, so I passed some time without a job. Now I have a job, but it can go from teaching to other job, working class jobs. So it's a reality of majority of people, and so I'm not industrial worker, but I. This is the good part of being desemployed, is that you can go, you have more free time to do something. So, no?
Well, I'd love a few more questions. Yeah. Could you I wanted to respect your time and not hold you here. Could you tell us a little bit about how you were radicalized? I'm really interested to hear that.
Oh, how I came to communist studies, or
Yeah.
sorry, they were calling me, but I only answer.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry. They were calling. I had a call, but now it's okay. It's okay.
You're
I can
getting a
answer.
phone call. I get it.
So how I came to communist ID? Oh, it was from the teenage, 15. No, I begin. Personally, we don't have an easy life, and because with my mother we live in pretty much poor condition, and if it was not for solidarity from family members, and reality is that I had some preoccupation about encountering the reason of why there is so much injustice or why there is people like suffering. No, I mean, why you see we have everything. No, we're not a poor country or underdeveloped because of the imperialist exploitation. So we are a rich country. There is everything. No, so why you have millions of people living really poor or miserable, inclusively nowadays is really each day is worse. So the impoverishment of people is really strong, and inclusively people say, "Oh, we're normal to develop country. We now like some third world countries because there are people dying of lack of food, or because they don't have shelters, or so." Now, what's the reason of this? No, so this is this question that lead me to question the actual society, read books, and participate in some of the movement in the 2011, 2012, and from there I began to membership. I take membership in the Communist Youth, which is linked to the old CPF, the French Communist Party, but there you go
Euro-communist
inside
is a
and
sort of contradiction in terms, I guess.
yeah,
It might be Euro, but
yeah, you stay there also. Or it is good to see from your own eyes, no, how the things are, how they deal with the things. But you see that they're not communists, no. So this is a so-called communist party, but they nobody there speak about communism or Marxism, and inclusively you look strange, no, if you want to read some book of Marx.
you
Oh,
know,
really?
let me cut in real quick. I'm sorry. I have terrible manners. I apologize. It's interesting. I'm sure you've read Stalin's renditions of Leninism, right? He in the I think the second section he talks about what happened within the Second International and the dogmatism that developed, right? And he talks about how people would use the words Marx and Engels, but all of the actual Marxism was removed from it. And I find a lot of what calls itself communist these days, even people who lead organizations are doing this exact thing. And it puts them into this spot of right opportunism. And to me, and this is actually something in your first answer to my first question I meant to get at, but it sort of went another way. What really drives me crazy is when they're sort of just going on liberalism. Why would you join a communist party? Why would you want to move up the ladder in a communist party? Why not just go be a liberal, right? You'd be better funded. You'd have more people that would understand what you're saying. You wouldn't have to, never tell anyone, shh, I'm a communist, right? This is how these people act. Not that I'm saying you do that like me. I tell everyone I'm a communist, but I don't get what makes them want to be in a communist party. I mean, it doesn't click to me,
Yes. I can understand because of the history. No, I know that in United States, the communist movement have really really hard history, no, to get white, and I can understand it's really problematic because, for example, I lived in Mexico, and in Mexico there was a strong communist party, but they were totally suppressed. So you see a society where there was not a historical strong communist movement is really more difficult to go to this, no? And in France, in some way, I can say we have a bit of luck in the sense of we had a strong communist movement, like the communist French Communist Party when it was actually communist. They were really strong in the post-war, no, era, in the Cold War also. So there was in the liberation after the war, there was the first party in election, and so they had to do a whole coalition of all the other party against them to actually prevent them to go leaving the state, no. And the reality is that there was millions of people voting communist or the Communist Party had, in the best moments, nearly 1 million members, no? And in the average, we can say 700,000, no, people. So it's really common, inclusively today, to have many families in France with where one uncle or aunt or grandfather or who knows, no, or one father or mother that was in militant or membership of the Communist Party, no, and so in some ways it's not so difficult from some people to get in some way attracted by the communist aesthetics, and because the Communist Party have a great deal in history, no, in France in the last century, so this heritage, this memory still some way exists. So despite all the anti-communism, the strong anti-communism now we have, which is really strong, but it can break everything. It can break all the memory of this, though. And the Communist Party, they are in the media, they have official, local, so you go in your town and you see there. So it's more easy in some way to go to this, no? But the real deal is they're saying that, in fact, they are not really communist and what is actually being communist. So this is the strongest, hardest part of being communist now in France, no?
So interesting and I know I've said this a lot, but it is incredibly inspiring listening to you speak today. So once again, thank you so much for coming on. Stick around after we go off air and we can chat for a few minutes, and talk trash about name names and stuff like that. I'm kidding. Anyway, that's gonna do it for us for today. Thank you everybody for showing up. Spread the word about the growing militancy in France, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Oh no, I can't
Everybody.
find the thing. Sorry, everybody. My button isn't clicking correctly. I apologize. It won't turn off. Bye, everybody.